Today on Let's Celebrate TV Basic Skills Day, it's measuring wet and dry ingredients. Hi everyone, welcome to today's episode of Let's Celebrate TV Basic Skills Day. I'm your host, Peter Lee. Today, we're going to be measuring wet and dry ingredients. And there is a difference, so let's get started. I have here in front of me some equipment and some ingredients to measure. Now, there's a difference between measuring wet and dry, or liquid and dry. So let's get started. We'll start with the wet ingredients. I have here a couple of measuring cups here, sometimes called graduate, because the measurements are graduated down the side. So this is for liquids or wet things, mostly liquids. I have two types. This kind that mom and dad had, grandma had. This is a little newer style. The measurements are on the inside, so you can look down from the top. Now, the difference between these is just that, how you measure. We're going to start measuring some milk. Now, the trick with these, you want to keep them on a flat, firm surface when you're measuring. You don't want to pick it up here and try and pour it in. You won't get an accuracy. And you really want things to be accurate when you're going through the trouble to measure. Now this type, you know how to do it. You just pour it in to whatever amount you want. But to be accurate, you're going to have to get down like this so you see where your liquid goes to match up with your desired amount. Otherwise, you're going to come up probably a little short. This type is a little easier because you can see the amount you're measuring from the top and you don't have to bend down. So this is my preferred style. That's for liquid. Pretty simple. But what about dry measurements? Let's start with some flour. I have here some dry measuring cups. I know you have a set, or you should have a set. Flour is a little trickier. You don't want to just scoop it in and measure it out. Why? Flour, when it sits in your canister or your container, it condenses down on itself and it gets really dense. And if you just scoop it in, you're packing it in your vessel even more, and then you're going to get too much flour in whatever it is you're making. Now we know that when we're baking especially, measuring accurately is the key. So how do you do it? I like to give it a little fluff first, just like that. Then you can use a scoop or a spoon. You spoon it in, just let it fall in naturally. With a knife, the flat edge, you scrape off and level it off. That is an accurate measuring of flour. Then you can just bake and go on your way. Then there's something like sugar. Sugar is already dense. It's already compressed on itself. You don't need to fluff it. Sugar is the exception. You can scoop it in, get a nice thing, but as with all dry ingredients, sweep it off, and now you have that exact amount of sugar that you need. Now, brown sugar, often the recipe will say packed brown sugar, and that's what they want you to do. They want you to pack it in to your measuring cup or your measuring spoon so you get that dense little cake of sugar. That's really the exception. Now, this sweeping off also goes for your measuring spoons when you are using these for dry ingredients. These can be used for dry or wet ingredients, but when you're doing a dry measuring, again, just like that. There's another way to measure things. You may see a recipe that calls for measuring by weight, and especially if you have a recipe that calls for metrics. Now, this is what you're going to need, a little kitchen scale. This is the kind I have. Not very expensive. I'll leave a link up to it in the comments section. This will do pounds, grams, and kilos and ounces, everything we need. So how do you work this thing? It's pretty easy. You're going to take your bowl or whatever you're measuring into, put it on your scale, and it's going to show the weight of this vessel. Then you want to hit the 0 button. That's called tare, or zeroing it out. It takes away the weight of the vessel so the display shows 0 again. Then you can just measure in whatever you want until you get to the weight. Now, if you're in America where we use ounces and pounds, and you're following a metric recipe that will call for grams, push the button and it converts it instantly. And then you can just measure in the metric form. And of course, here on LCTV, we offer both metric and imperial or American measurements for all of our audience. So those are the basics of measuring wet and dry ingredients. So if you like this episode, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and you'll get a new episode every single week. We'll see you Tuesdays for our regular episodes and Fridays for our basic skills or cocktail episodes. So until next time, you're all invited to come on over, come on in, and let's celebrate. Cheers.